And you will be amazed if you know that almost all successful people that we know around the world, one way or another, they have this self-reflection. And it's very important that I would say half of the progress of a personal development depends on this reflection. So take it very serious, and you will be amazed the results that you can achieve through this methodology. And if you start practicing it, it's so addictive that you start implementing it as a habit every day. Because reflection is not only a habit that successful people do, but also is the enabler of building that identity. You're gonna realize that your identity is developing, you are evolving, you're expanding your identity, and you are adding to your capacity, and you realize that improvement already happening with you. More about that coming up. What does it mean, coaching conversation? And how can we actually activate this conversation and guide it to a way that helps us to understand more, to understand ourselves more, and bring that hidden wisdom to the surface. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Plan B Methodology Framework. This training is going to be published in YouTube, and some of them with a more explanation will be on the website. So please check my website, www.amirfarhangi.com. If you're not familiar with the concept around Plan B methodology, we are going through elements of foundations, elements of the mindfulness within the methodology, and today's episode is also one of the main elements of foundation as well as part of the system. So this episode is about self-coaching methodology I called ROAR. It's a way of reflection that helps us understand where we have problems that we can improve them. Quite often we are busy with a faster speed rate of modern life, and this doesn't let us to ponder, to reflect around our situations, our deficiencies, our weaknesses, our strengths, even our success, our failures, or shall we call them a lesson for future, lessons to learn. So these are elements that we would like to consider as an opportunities that help us to develop, opportunities that help us progress. But if we don't do that level of reflection, if we don't do that coaching mechanism, conversation with ourselves, we will not be able to achieve that objectives. And you will be amazed if you know that almost all successful people that we know around the world, one way or another, they have this self-reflection, they have this review, and they analyze their situations and try to understand what are the best way forward with regards to the reactions, with regards to their emotions, with regards to the developments. So let us start this episode and learn more about reflection. So ROAR is an abbreviation that I picked for this type of reflection. And before I go through this abbreviation and explain it, that what does it mean, I would like to first explain it, because quite often in several parts of the trainings you heard that Plan B foundation is based on mindfulness and giving ourselves the space that we can actually remove all the noise, all the distractions, and start understanding what's happening with us and what can we do in order to develop ourselves. ROAR is another aspect of that mindfulness. It's not a practice of mindfulness as itself. It's not like meditation, but it is mindful observation of our action, our emotions, and understanding them. If there is a weakness, if there is a deficiency, if there is a lesson to learn, what is it and how can we improve it? How can we get better? And it's very important that I would say half of the progress of a personal development depends on this reflection. So take it very serious, and you will be amazed the results that you can achieve through this methodology. It's something that I say most of my achievement are because of these reflections and these ROAR sessions that I had. And I will explain exactly what you need to do, how to implement this methodology on your day-to-day life. But of course, you also learn what are the requirements of implementing this methodology. And if you start practicing it, it's so addictive that you start implementing it as a habit every day. And it's a fantastic idea if you can make this or build this in part of day-to-day habitual behaviors. I think it was a podcast that I published before about how to build habits, but we will have another session about building habits because it's very important to improve our day-to-day routine as well. And that activity, this ROAR, can be one of those routines that deserve to have its own space and its own allocation of time to improve ourselves, to develop ourselves. And also, one more thing that I would like to explain before we get to the nitty-gritty part of explaining the methodology is that we talk also about upgrading our identity. I think it was the previous training when we talk about different state of mind, a state of body and physic and energy, and also a state of identity to understand where we are. And if we are upgrading our identity to a role model that we would like to be in future, and we said we can start embodying some of those characteristics already, we don't need to wait for 3 years, 4 years. We can start already, do some research and understand such personality, how they behave, how they act, what they read, how they think, what value they have, how they appear. All of these traits and all of this personality can already be built into our current identity, either through habit building or either through the practice every day, and we upgrade our identity. One of the main characteristics of the successful people that needs to be built into that identity is also the habits of reflections. Therefore, this is another reason that why we need to build that reflection, because reflection is not only the habits that successful people do, but also is the enabler of building that identity. If we want to build that identity even more efficient, practicing ROAR and implementing this methodology will give you a shortcut that is unbelievably with a very high speed. You will find yourself getting to that point as quick as possible. Okay, so I'm sure you all want to hear what are the details, how can we do that, what are the requirements. I start with one question first, and I would like you to answer this question as honest as possible. And that is, how often you are not feeling good about something and you would like to change it, but you don't have time to think about it? How often we think about our events that took place through the day, through the week, through the months, and pick which one we liked, which one we didn't like, and what we do about them. I have to say, if you are one of them that answer to this question that yes, I'm doing it, if not every day, every week or every month, then well done to you, because you are in a minority that probably is about less than 5% of the population. Unfortunately, for most of us, we are so much busy with day-to-day life, with the high speed of the modern life especially, that we don't have enough time. We don't have time to look inside and observe and evaluate what we do and analyze. So this is an invitation that we need to have that space. We need to bring that space, because otherwise we might keep repeating the same behavior again and again. And of course, repetition of the same behavior means stagnation. And the whole point of this video, the whole point of this program, the whole point of you spending your time right now watching this program is to improve. We are high achievers. We would like to improve. And this is one of the main elements that we have to consider as a treat to ourselves, then we need that space and we need to dedicate some time to implement it. A little bit of history before I go to ROAR, because I would like to also give you the flavor of where this methodology come from. Originally, when I started looking at this methodology, I was looking at techniques within the CBT, within the cognitive behavior therapy. And if you're not familiar with the cognitive behavior therapy, what it says is that we have the outer world and then we have the inner world. And the inner world is our understanding from the outer world, and our sensations are trying to compile and analyze data from the outer world to translate the data into an outcome that you would like to take forward and show some reaction against them. So let me simplify it. For example, in the outside world, you see a lot of things happening. You listen to them, you hear things, and then you start analyzing them. And then based on what you analyzed, you would say, I'm going to respond based on the data I received to do A or B, two different actions. And all these two different actions, if two people observe something, their reaction will be different. Why? Because two people might not have the same input from the same event. And you might ask why? Quite simply because we are not capable to observe and receive all the data as they are. If in each second millions bits of data are happening around us, our body and our sensation can only observe maybe a few thousands of them. So for that reason, it will not be complete version of the reality. What we see or what we observe is not necessarily the actual reality. There are lots of tests to prove that human is capable of error in vision, error in hearing, error in most of the sensations that we have, because we are not perfect. Yes, we evolved through the million years of evolution, but we are not perfect creatures. And for the same reason, if something happens and makes us angry, makes us emotional, and we feel frustrated, we feel bad about it, then we quite often start making some conclusion which is more close to the worst case scenario. And because of that, our reaction is fight or flight. So we're not analyzing, we're very quickly reacting to the adversary. But in reality, what we call adversary or what we call bad event is not necessarily bad thing. It might be something else, and interpretation wasn't right. The way we understood the situation wasn't quite correct. One typical example is in your workplace, you are waiting for a colleague to reply to you, but that person reply in one line something that is not necessarily helpful. And you very quickly make the conclusion that potentially that colleague, potentially line manager or whoever that person is, falling out or have problems, and our brain start compiling a set of data that lead to some reactions that might not be helpful. We feel stressed, we feel angry, we feel emotional, we feel frustrated. But in reality, it might be a completely different thing. It might be that your colleague was busy or had something urgent happen in their life. And what happened was just a small reflection that probably wasn't very important in their eyes when they sent the reply. I'm not saying that all the time is the case, but it's quite often when we have that cognitive behavior therapy sessions, when the therapist asks, can it be other scenario leading to this situation? And you explore, yeah, of course, different scenario can lead to the same outcome, but we choose the worst case scenario. And the other aspect of it is, because of that, we don't let ourselves to think, and we get stressed. And when we are getting stressed, another thing happens in our brain. The reaction of fight or flight is again another problem. It's coming from way our brain works. And I need to explain it maybe a little bit more. And it comes back to the way the brain is evolved through million years of evolution. But before we get into that point, let me ask you something today, or something that recently happened to you. If you bring a scenario that you did not like, you did not the outcome, you did not like the way the situation turned out, and you started making stories, making conclusions in your mind, and the conclusions that were not healthy, and you were feeling frustrated, and you were feeling angry, or you were feeling emotional. Please write it down for yourself. What was that event? What was it that you didn't like about it? And then ask yourself, was there any other potential possibilities could lead to the same outcome? And then write them as well as another column. These are the potential other scenarios that potentially could happen that lead to the same results. If that is the case, what would be your reaction? So the worst case scenario, the first option that you opt, led to that frustration, that emotion. What other scenario? What was the outcome of the other scenarios? Not the same. Maybe sometimes even positive. Maybe we feel even more empathic against the person who's done this. Write it down and then compare the two scenarios that come. And one more thing that I would like to add to this, think about now that you do this, even it is the worst case scenario, what was your reaction? Can the reaction be different? So let's say the worst case scenario was actually something that unfortunately happened in an unlikely scenario. But even that was the case, what does that mean to you? Is fight or flight is the only solution for you? Is there any other possibility that you can take forward? What is it in your brain, in our brain, that doesn't let us think straight and give us a better proactive solution? Do this exercise because it's pretty much related to what I want to say in the next part of this video, why our brain works like this. So imagine your brain, and we know in the species, in the realm of a species, human brain is quite large brain amongst other animals. And the reason is we are evolved. But before that evolution happened, the center part of the brain was made in advance. Even before we were modern apes, we had that amygdala in the center of our brain. And amygdala was a very basic form of our brain, which is still there, and unfortunately is a mechanism that activates before any part of the brain. So amygdala start sending a reaction as soon as find itself in a tricky situation, a stressful situation, a worst case scenario situation, and send a message of fight or flight without any consideration, without any analysis, and without compiling any data. Just straight away, it sends the message. And we do something very reactively. And quite often afterwards, we feel not very happy because we were not happy with that reaction. We were not happy with that temptation. We were not happy with that message or what we said very immediately. And we want to change something. We're not happy with the way we are dealing with problems. The good news is that the evolution developed our brain. Our modern human brain has a prefrontal cortex which doing the analysis. But usually the mechanism, the straight mechanism, the very quick mechanism is not going through the prefrontal cortex, it's through our amygdala. And we have to learn a way how to bypass amygdala, how to let the prefrontal cortex make the decision. Because that part analyzes the data. That part observes and compiles the data and make a logic, make some conclusion which makes sense to us. And the best way around this is to give us the space and think about the situation. If you have the clarity, if you have that space, then the noises or the ripples on the surface of the water calm down and get quiet, and we can reflect. We can see the reflection of ourselves. We can see ourselves better, know where I am going now. The abbreviation of reflection, observation, analysis, and reaction, ROAR. When you have that reflection, you start observing yourself. Now you see yourself properly. Now you analyze, and now your reaction will not be based on reactive decision, but will be based on proactive, studied conclusion coming from your brain. So that's where the idea of RAW came out to my mind, that, well, I can formulate this and I know how to give myself that space. You guessed it, journaling. Journaling is one of the best ways that we give ourselves that space. We start picking a pen and paper and write down what happened today, what I like, what I don't like. In Plan B journal, which hopefully is coming out this year, I put a specific part of each day journal to what is your mood, what is your emotion today, what was it that you didn't like about it. It's just a start. It just initiates that conversation, that space, so we understand what happened to us and what is it that we didn't like, and then think about it, do a reflection, observation, analysis, and reaction based on that analysis. This is very important, it's very powerful, but of course it requires space. It requires that time, that dedicated time that you do this practice. You cannot do this in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You cannot do this while you do something else. Let's do that as well. Let's put a quick note. In fact, instead of writing, you can also record your voice and have a conversation, have a coaching style conversation. More about that coming up. What does it mean, coaching conversation? And how can we actually activate this conversation and guide it to a way that helps us to understand more, to understand ourselves more, and bring that hidden wisdom to the surface. But before I go to the coaching mechanism and coaching style conversation, let me explain a little bit also about another way that we can actually start stepping into that space, bypassing amygdala. And that's called labeling your emotion. So you have a feeling, you have a emotion. Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it sadness? That feeling is different with one day to another. So we are not feeling the same anger every day. If you are familiar with the wheel of emotion, you know what I'm talking about, because, for example, below anger, there are lots of other subcategories of the feeling that belongs to the same category, but it doesn't mean that we always have the same feeling. And if we understand where we are, that will help us better to react. And because we don't know that, one of the tool set that helping us is to label our feeling. Label it with color, label it with similar scenery that you associate with that emotion. Is it like a jungle? Is it like a hidden tunnel? Or if it's a color, is it light red? Is it violet colors? What color is it? Because by adding the label to your emotion, you start thinking, you start using your prefrontal cortex, and without knowing, you start acting more logically. And that is one way also around how to bypass amygdala and not to let reaction comes to our mind straight away. So coming back to that space that we talk about, that session of reflection that we would like to have, either through journaling or either through recording our voice. And we know these days most of these voice memo application has a transcription of our voice as well. If we don't have time to write it down, we can actually have the transcription immediately. But if we have that moment and we start talking, how we can actually start that conversation. And I talk about the coaching style, because this is something I'm very passionate about. I will give you one formula, although it's not one formula for everything. Of course, you can do more reflection around it and you develop yourself more and understand more. But this is something that you can start as a good starting point. And that is to first recognize your emotion and your feeling about your emotion or your feeling about your reaction. What was it that you're not happy? And then talk about different questions. Usually these questions are called 5W1H, which is what, where, when, which, who, and how. So you realize I missed why. And the reason I missed why is because in the coaching mechanism, we rephrase it to something like, what was the reason behind it? What is standing in front of you and not letting you to progress to the next step? And then ask this question, what was it that you didn't like? When did you feel that? And start taking the conversation to understand where you are and understand where you want to be. And then through this gap, find what are the options? What can you do? Have that conversation with yourself. What is it that you can do to fill this gap? Is it a training? Is it a development? Is it reflection? Is it more pausing? Then gradually you will come up with a list of things that you can do, and you choose one or two of them and write it down for yourself. This is what I'm going to do. And you will build a depository of actions and improvement that through a week, through a month, don't wait for reading a big list of books in order to improve. Or even if you read after each chapter, start reflection, start thinking, start having that conversation. After any bad event, after any adversity, start having that conversation. You might have an immediate action that you didn't like, but talk about that action. Think about that action. Potentially, you didn't do right at the point, at that time, but next time, you will do something right. You will do something better. And that continuous improvement, that coaching mechanism will bring you to another level of improvement. At the end of this video, what I would like you to do is to think about that space that you need to give yourself. This doesn't happen with 1 minute, 2 minutes in a rush. Your true self deserves to have that space. Give yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even more if you can. And if you start having that conversation with yourself, either through recording or journaling, you start feeling the connection with your true identity, with your true potential. And that cliche sentence of unlocking your potential that usually appears in most of the coach websites these days, literally happening in your life. And new potentials turning to reality. New potentials evolving, and they turn to reality. I hope you enjoy this session, and I hope you start practicing ROAR. Remember, knowledge that doesn't lead to practice is pointless. So I invite you all to start practicing any knowledge you learn. If you don't like it, you put it aside, but practice it. You learn something very powerful, and if you don't use it, you don't cherish it, you don't realize what an important tool, what an important methodology you just learned today. So I hope you all enjoy your reflection sessions, and I wish you all the best for the future. Thank you all.